Hello and welcome back to another lockdown update on the Fighting Fantasy collection. So quite a few things to talk about today. Let's start with latest arrivals. So what have we got here? This one. Yeah. And this one. And where is it? This one. So I've shown these already, but just a quick recap. Caesar Blood turned up this week, a nice copy. And Return to Firetop Mountain, number 50 in the series. And also this, Care City Porter Traps Sorcery Scholastic Edition. But look at this, just for a tenner this was. It's signed by none other than Steve Jackson. So that was a great little find. I'll add that to my signed copies. I've got Death Trap Dungeon, Trial of the Champions, and Warlock of Firetop Mountain, signed by Ian Livingstone. So more of these in the post. Blood of the Zombies is on its way. I actually did have that copy, but I gave it away to a friend. It was quite expensive to relocate, but that's on its way, as are a few others. I haven't gone too mad because I'm trying to buy them gradually. Also, another signed book I have is by Jonathan Green, Fighting Fantasy author. He signed this for me at Expo in 2019. The last Expo, in fact, UK Games Expo Birmingham. And I only got round to playing it properly yesterday. And I completed it. It's great because you can choose to play as one of 4 characters. Wendy Darling, Tiger Lily, Peter Pan and Captain James Hook. It's of course set in Neverland, but an alternative steampunk Land That Time Forgot version of the universe. Can be enjoyed by kids and adults. So I played as Wendy Darling. You've got this fantastic bookmark here with all the stats on the back. Of course, this book has not just one adventure sheet at the front, but 3 or 4 at the back as well. And what can I say about it other than I thoroughly enjoyed it? It took up most of the afternoon, and I think I completed it around 8 o'clock last night. Jonathan Green, author of Curse of the Mummy, the last book for the original run of Fighting Fantasy when Puffin had the line. He's actually got 2 projects which are crowdfunding at the moment on Kickstarter, and I'll show you a bit more about those in a minute. I've backed both of them. One is Dracula Curse of the Vampire. So a game book like this, set in the Bram Stoker universe. This one's set in the J.M. Barrie universe, of course. He's done Alice in Wonderland, he's done Wizard of Oz, and he's done Beowulf as well. And the most recently funded game book that he's put out is Dracula Curse of the Vampire, which is still taking late pledges. But another thing that he's working on at the moment is a role-playing game based on his Beowulf fantasy game book. So he did a fantasy game book like this called Beowulf, and he's actually got a role-playing game coming out based on that setting, role-playing in the world of Beowulf and Grendel. So if you're interested in that, that finishes in 3 days. I'll show you a little bit about that in just a moment. Please fund it if you're interested in game books and interested in keeping them going in the digital age. I cannot recommend Jonathan Green enough. In fact, he is the author that wrote You Are the Hero, which I've literally just finished reading this morning. Now, I found this copy on the shelf in Waterstones, kind of in their hallway on the way to the toilets, and it was just there. It was quite expensive. I think it cost me about £30, £40 at the time. And when I took it to the checkout, the lady said, "Oh, I didn't know we had this." And it was the only copy in the shop. And I thought, why doesn't Waterstones know that they're stocking this? This was a few years back now. Anyway, I've just got around to reading it. And I know just from this one read here, so it's how many pages long? 267 pages in length. I feel like I know everything about the Fighting Fantasy series now. And what strikes me the most is how many people were involved from the Games Workshop era. The artists, the writers, the game designers. So many famous names were involved with Fighting Fantasy, getting their first breaks as artists and writers and game designers. And the amount of people that it's inspired from that 80s boom. It inspired people who would now be in their 30s and 40s, possibly older. It inspired them as younger adults and children to go, after reading the game books, to go on and achieve great things. No one comes away from those game books uninfluenced. And speaking on a personal level, I think it was books like that that made me realise, yes, I could travel, yes, I could go to foreign places and find my way quite easily with a map and a basic understanding of the local language. Because when you're given that opportunity as a child to think for yourself and make your own decisions, it's very empowering. You know, it's not top-down education where you're just being given the answers to a test and then expected to recite those answers correctly. You're actually given valid choices where your decisions will affect the outcome. And that's so standard now in video games and role-playing games, but at the time it was a fairly new thing to give people that opportunity when reading a book, because before that you were just reading a story and listening to the author's tale. But with these you could actually be involved, and there's so many interesting little fun facts in this book, but one that particularly entertained me was when Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone went to Japan to promote Death Trap Dungeon and the Fighting Fantasy series. There's a great little account in here of that. Of course, I'll just have to find it, so bear with me. I should have had it ready, shouldn't I? Here it is. Is it here? Later on. Gonna have to edit this later. But this gives you a good impression what Silent Reading Hour was like. People flipping through books, rolling dice. Dice, interestingly enough, got banned in our Silent Reading Hour at primary school. Our teacher, the head teacher, he slammed his fist down on the desk and said, "These are not books. These are not books. They're games. They're banned." Which was a real shame, because all the boys, most of the boys in the class, were reading them. And you had boys interested in reading who weren't normally interested in reading, suddenly picking up Terry Pratchett, the Sorcery books, the Narnia series, Tolkien and all the rest. And of course it's less gender specific now, but one of the great things about Fighting Fantasy was it didn't specify whether you were male or female. You were just you. So a boy or a girl could pick up one of those books and be the hero, and it wouldn't allude to gender specific roles of maidens, rescuing maidens, or being a princess or whatever. You were just the hero. But getting sidetracked slightly, but one of my favourite stories, and I keep telling this story, so I'll tell it again, was when that same head teacher called me up to the front of the class and he said, "I've just read your creative writing story about the trial in the labyrinth. Absolutely brilliant," he said. "Really good creative writing. Where on earth did you get that idea? Is that really yours?" And I said, yes, that's all my story. And of course, it was a fictionalized version of Trial of the Champions. So that was very satisfying, having those books banned and then writing a creative story based on one of those books, and then the same teacher giving it equal praise to the amount of damnation he had given the playbooks that the ideas had come from. That was very satisfying as an 8-year-old kid. But I remember thinking, I better not tell him it's a fighting fantasy novel. Anyway, here we go. This is what I want to share with you. This is big in Japan. So it says, Fighting Fantasy was the name given to the Fighting Fantasy series. And it's spelt in katakana, which is the alphabet used for foreign words. In 1986, Shakai Shissosha, really difficult to say that, Shakai Shissosha, the Japanese publishers of the range, arranged a publicity tour for the two co-founders of Fighting Fantasy and invited Jackson and Livingston to visit Tokyo to sign copies of their books. Fans turned out in their hundreds. Shakai Shissosha was a small publisher of mainly dry academic works, sociology and the like. Jackson explains, Penguin's Japanese agent approached them with Fighting Fantasy. It wasn't their thing at all, but the editor gave a sample of Warlock to his teenage son, who was studying English. The son was so enthusiastic that they signed up a deal. I have no idea what happened to bring the books into the public eye, but suddenly Fighting Fantasy was something of a sensation, and Shakai Shissosha, who would normally sell 5,000 to 10,000 copies max of one of their academic books, suddenly found they sold 250,000 copies of Warlock. Through Penguin, we got them to agree that if they sold 2 million plus books in Japanese, they would invite us over for a publicity tour. They honoured their promise. And so it was that in 1986, Ian and I flew to Tokyo and embarked on a memorable publicity tour. On our arrival, our hosts gave us both envelopes, which we assumed were itineraries, but later found they had given us about 1,000 cash each. I suggested this was to pay for the hotel and put a limit on our expenses, so they didn't have to pay for long phone calls back to our families in the UK. But no, as we checked out of the hotel, we were told that the company had paid for our rooms already. The cash was simply our pocket money. Shakai Shissosha even arranged a Fighting Fantasy Day and went so far as to register the names of the co-creators in kanji, the system of Japanese writing borrowed from Chinese characters. First event was signing at a big bookstore, says Jackson, in Tokyo. We arrived stretching from our signing table right across the shop floor and up 3 flights of stairs, and people had brought us small gifts. Next day was a Fighting Fantasy convention. The hall was packed with fans who we spoke to through our interpreter. Then we went on the bullet train to various other cities for signings. We were overwhelmed by the response to the tour. On the bullet train to Kyoto, we asked our editor how our names would appear on the book covers in traditional Japanese. He explained that Western names were not really translatable, but they could be registered in kanji. It was a bit like the trademark system. You put some characters together and officially registered them. And from then on, they meant something in kanji. He offered to create kanji characters that would represent our names. Mine was a combination of 3 existing characters which translated into Happy Emperor Samurai or something like that. 3 weeks after we returned home, I received a packet from Japan which contained official ink stamps with our kanji translations and a few t-shirts with our characters printed on them. The only problem was he couldn't tell which was which, so for all I know, Ian has 3 t-shirts with Steve Jackson on, and I have the Ian Livingston ones. To the English-speaking reader, the literal translations of some Fighting Fantasy titles seem particularly peculiar, while still making perfect, imperfect sense. For example, the Warlock of Firetop Mountain, magical use of fire-blowing mountain, Starship Traveller, the spaceship which you can wander about, Talisman of Death, Necklace of Dead God, the Kings of Kether, Federal Criminal Investigator of Outer Space, Appointment with Fear, Push Down the Cyborg, Rebel Planet, Electric Brain Destructive Maneuvers, Trial of Champions, Labyrinth Exploration Competition, Slaves of the Abyss, this is my favourite one, Monarch of Basement. And there's loads more there about Japan and the interesting covers that were produced for the books. But more recently, Ian Livingston put out a message on his Twitter feed asking what the characters meant. So I asked my friends in Japan. This is Ian Livingston's Hanko seal What does it mean? And we got some great answers from people. So they said it's ancient kanji. It says Ian Livingstone. First name is from the sound of the top two kanji, which means to entrust and also means peace and safety. The family name is from the meaning of the bottom two kanji, to live, living, and to stone. So it's kind of a word play on Japanese characters to make his name, because Livingstone isn't a word, of course. It says, my friend said it was an advanced phonetic. So an advancement on a phonetic. Ian Livingstone, basically. And then some other ideas from other fans. Suckenvit is a worm. Still got your phone card, Gov. Here's a good answer. Devotion, feel at ease, living and stone. The first two make the sound Ian. The second two don't make the sound Livingstone, but actually mean living and stone. That's so cool. Just in case, it's probably best not to know. Phonetically sounds like Ian, and the second one is Lifestone. According to Google Translate Commission History Stone, the characters match. Yeah, so most people are agreed on the Livingstone. Someone says this goes back to China. You can use this stamp for legal documents in Japan. That's correct. The characters mean a legendary stone, into which a terrible monster, nine-tailed fox, metamorphoses. It can kill those who approach with its sulfur gas. Another person, I am Japanese. It probably means the living stone, the keeper of the peace of mind. To be precise, though, there is no Japanese for that word. And then the best one here. I don't speak Japanese, but my guess is that it says, do you turn right along the passage or enter the stone-walled chamber? I absolutely love that. So one thing that this book addresses is the future of fighting fantasy. Where does it go next? It's the 40th anniversary next year, but over the last 10 years or so, since the 30th, there's been talks of making a movie of it, making comics. We've seen fantastic apps from Inkle and Tin Man Games. Some really good stuff, but it all seems to be like a variation on a theme. And I think, what's wrong with just keeping them as books? I play video games, I play anything that comes out, but the joy I get from thumbing back and forth, reading a book, the game engine's in here.
Alright, well, here it is. Kickstarter, Heriot role-playing in the world of Beowulf Beastslayer. A rules-light RPG inspired by the Anglo-Saxon epic poem Beowulf and the mythic world of the Viking sagas. There's a lovely little video you can watch here. If you click the link, I'll put that in the description to my video. We or they, I should say, or he, is saying here that there are just 3 days to go for Heriot role-playing in the world of Beowulf Beastslayer on Kickstarter, but there are still more than 60 Trollslayer rewards to be claimed. Secure yours today. So what does that mean? Let's have a look. So, role-playing in the world of Beowulf Beastslayer, a rules-light RPG inspired by the mythic world of Beowulf. Take part in storytelling contests, hear the bards sing tales of your heroic sagas, and forge your own legend. Written by award-winning author Jonathan Green from Ace Gamebooks and Fighting Fantasy, as well as Games Workshop and Doctor Who. Illustrated by none other than John Howe, the Lord of the Rings film trilogy artist, conceptual artist, Tolkien artist of calendars, Tolkien books, you name it. One of the most famous Tolkien artists out there. The Hobbit film trilogy and Beowulf. Russ Nicholson, one of the most famous fighting fantasy authors. He illustrated the very first Warlock of Firetop Mountain, as well as D&D, Fabled Lands and Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and a whole host of other artists, including Kev Crossley, Ryan McGee, Ajayi Olajide and Katie Wakelin. Here are the rewards, depending on which pledge level you choose. You could receive the following: PDFs and print codes for Heriot, the role-playing game. So you can get a printed copy, but it's like a print-on-demand system where you get a code, you send it to the printers, and then they print you off a copy. An exclusive miniature of Grendel's mother from Otherworld Miniatures, a themed deck of Hiriot playing cards, and the best one I think here is your likeness included in an illustration drawn by Russ Nicholson. Imagine that for a legacy. Add-ons include signed copies of Beowulf Beastslayer, playing cards, and miniatures of Beowulf and Grendel. But I don't need to read all this to you. Go and have a look. There's just 3 days to go on this. I'm making an RPG of the game book that was previously released, Beowulf. The next stretch goal to unlock would be a magic supplement, the one after that a source book, and the one after that a campaign. They're currently on 8,000, I think. 8,888. So still a way to go before the next stretch goal. So that's Hierot. Very difficult to pronounce, but that's the one. And also, they are still taking pledges for this one, which I've also backed, Dracula Curse of the Vampire. So I was rambling before about keeping the adventure book game industry going. This is a great way to support it. Dracula Curse of the Vampire has funded. It is written by Jonathan Green, who's finished the manuscript I think a couple of weeks back now. It's probably the biggest manuscript I've ever seen. It might well be the biggest adventure game book ever written. We'll have to see. Martin McKenna, sadly no longer with us, passed away last year. A great loss. Great loss to the industry of sci-fi and fantasy. So I'm sure it's still being backed and supported by artists, and won't be much longer now for this one. 15,000 pledged of the 10,000 goal, 335 backers. Interactive gothic horror novel inspired by the works of Bram Stoker. What more could you want? I don't think I really need to sell that any further than that's going to be one worth having. In the same vein as these books, Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz, Neverland, Nightmare Before Christmas, and Beowulf. Completed this one just the other day, and I'm keen to read the others. But yeah, that's going to do it. Oh, that's rather nice. Some dice trays there, from All Rolled Up. Lovely stuff. Alright, thanks for watching.
Why does Portal of Evil have no number? Is all you know.